That was Circles by Cavo here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and believe it or not, welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. I'd like to give a big special thanks to Lorenzo for covering the news for me. Managed to get in a little late. You know, I woke up early today, specifically because I knew I had a lot of things to do, and yet, you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out regardless of that fact. So, wound up sliding in here, like, with 5 minutes left, and Lorenzo thankfully covered that for me. So, big appreciation to Lorenzo. Anyway, we like to kick the show off with what the new game releases are for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. Let me see if I can bring that up. Anime, there we go. So, let us get started as I'm sliding into home plate here. On PlayStation 4, what do you have today? Well, first of all, PlayStation 4 this week has Bad North, Battle Chef Brigade Deluxe, Blade Strangers, only the digital release though. I just found out on the way here that the physical release has been delayed until I believe September 4th. Bow to Blood, which is a PlayStation VR space pirate ship commanding competitive game. You play the captain of a space pirate ship, and you command your crew, which consists entirely of robots, while also competing against other ships. It is actually single player and not multiplayer, and has a rather lengthy, randomly generated campaign. Sounds pretty interesting, makes me wish I had more money. Anyway, we've got Bridge Constructor Portal, Catch and Release, also a PlayStation VR game. It is a good week for PlayStation VR. Catch and Release is a fishing game where I would say the big hook is the fact that you have a rowboat that you can row. So you're free roaming all over a lake and fishing in VR. Very nice. Donut Country, Downward Spiral, Horus Station, which is also a PlayStation VR game. Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Extra Pack 3, which I believe is the one that has Kefla and Super Baby Vegeta in it. Then we've got Far Cry 5, Dead Living Zombies. Fern's Gate, which is a new RPG from Kemco, one of their Android iPhone games being ported to a bunch of consoles. Fire Pro Wrestling World, which is that entered early access on Steam a good while ago. Now it has its proper PS4 release. And yeah, it's a wrestling game that doesn't look that amazing on the surface, but beneath the surface is incredible. But yeah, it uses like 2D sprites rotating around for all the different characters. Great character customization. I would probably recommend getting the Steam one over the PS4 one, though. Because like I said, it has really good character customization. And the Steam one has not only been out longer, but it has Steam Workshop support. So you can just go into the Steam Workshop, search things up, and download just tons of people's custom-created wrestlers. There are thousands on there. People are doing incredible work, and I don't know if there's a good way to get those on PS4. Moving on. Firewall Zero Hour. Again, PlayStation VR. That is the big game of the week. It is a 4v4 competitive tactical first-person shooter with support for both the DualShock 4 and the PlayStation Aim controller. There's a PlayStation Aim bundle. It looks really incredible. I can't wait to play it. Unfortunately, the single player also requires online, which makes me rather pissy. So we will talk about that in a little bit. Johnny Turbo's Arcade Gate of Doom finally got a PS4 release. That's been on Switch for a while. Middle-earth Shadow of War Definitive Edition. Pato Box Pro Evolution Soccer 2019. Rocket League Ultimate Edition. Shinkondo Soul Eater, which is a bullet hell shooter. Splash Blast Panic. Strange Brigade. Sunless Sea Submariner Edition. Switchblade. The Golf Club 2019 featuring PGA Tour. Torn, PlayStation VR game. Viking Days, PlayStation VR game. And Yakuza Kiwami 2, a remake of Yakuza 2. And then, let's see, in a little bit, yeah, that would be Thursday, we will have Haunted Dungeons, Hayaki Castle, Penguin Coon Wars gets its PS4 release, and Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet Collapse of Balance. That name actually kind of amuses me. And then Friday, PlayStation 4 will be getting, supposedly it'll finally be getting the physical release of Apex Construct, which is a PlayStation VR first-person shooter that uses a bow and arrow, a game called Claybook, Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition, Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker, NBA 2K19 The Prelude, Think of the Children. And that sums up this week. What's Xbox One got this week? It's a busy week. Xbox One this week has Bad North, Bridge Constructor Portal, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Extra Pack 3, Far Cry 5, Dead Living Zombies, Middle Earth Shadow of War Definitive Edition, Pro Evolution Soccer 2019, Rocket League Ultimate Edition, Shinkondo Soul Eater, Splash Blast Panic, Strange Brigade, The Golf Club 2019 featuring PGA Tour, Warhammer 40k Martyr. Oh hey, the Xbox One tomorrow will be getting a port of 3-on-3 Freestyle, which is a free-to-play MMO basketball game. It's been on PS4 for a while, so that's nice. DayZ game preview and Twin Robots Ultimate Edition. On the 30th, Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet Collapse of Balance, and 31st has Amnesia Collection, Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition, Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker, NBA 2K19 The Prelude, and The Video Kid. That's an interesting sounding game. Moving on, Nintendo Switch this week has Blade Strangers, though good luck finding a physical copy of that, struck out there. DeBlob 2, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 Extra Pack 3, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, Rocket League Ultimate Edition, The Walking Dead, The Telltale Series, The Final Season, Victor Vran Overkill Edition. Tomorrow it's getting Western 1849 Reloaded, and on the 30th, Azure Reflections, Cheeky Cheeky Boxy Racers, Fall of Light Darkest Edition, Freedom Planet, which, that's an indie, sort of an indie Sonic clone that's been out for a while. It was released on Wii U earlier. I love that game. It is incredible. Like, imagine a more combat-centric Sonic. It's like Sonic mixed with Rocket Knight. It's really, really good. You can download a demo off the company's website. They've got a sequel in the works, so you can download a demo of that. Of all the indie games out there, Freedom Planet is probably the one I recommend the highest. Following that, Haunted Dungeons, Hayaki Castle, Instant Tennis, Pick-a-Pix Deluxe, Giant Puzzles 3, Real Politics with a K, Shinkondo Soul Eater, The Messenger, and The Video Kid. Ooh! And on the 31st, the Switch is getting Dust and Elysian Tale. That is a side-scrolling, slightly Metroidvania-ish game, very inspired by Vanillaware's works. I remember picking it up when it first released as an Xbox Live Arcade game. A very good game. Highly recommended. Love it. 3DS. This week it gets nothing. Vita this week gets Fern's Gate. So, what about next week? Well, next week, PlayStation 4 will be getting... Oh, right, the physical edition. I looked at this list and I saw Blade Strangers again. Oh, wow. Okay, so, this is an interesting list. It would appear that the game releases are starting. Wow! Getting ready for Christmas. So, next week, the PlayStation 4 is getting 428 Shibuya Scramble, Blade Strangers, the actual physical edition, Claws of Furry, Destiny 2 Forsaken Legendary Collection. Oh wow, Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age comes out next week. Genesis Alpha 1, God Wars The Labyrinth of Yomi, Ninjin Clash of Carrots, Operation Warcade, I guess that's getting a physical release. I know it's a PlayStation VR game that's like Operation Wolf. Planet Alpha, Shadows Awakening, Slime Rancher, Super Street the Game, The Long Dark, and Zone of the Enders, the second runner Mars, which is both a 4K re-release of Zone of the Enders, but also lets you play the entire game in VR. Wow, it would appear that the PlayStation VR is starting to pick up steam. Nice. Then on the 7th, yeah, that would be Friday, next Friday, that is, the PS4 will be getting Arcade Islands Volume 1, Immortal Unchained, Marvel's Spider-Man, which I know that's a big deal, NASCAR Heat 3, NBA 2K19 20th Anniversary Edition, NBA Live 19, Sultan Sanctuary, oh wow, and SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy is next Friday? I need so much more money. Xbox One, what do you have? Next week, Xbox One is getting Claws of Furry, Destiny 2 Forsaken Legendary Collection, Dimension Drive, Genesis Alpha 1, Ninjin Clash of Carrots, Planet Alpha, Thank you, Backpack. Planet Alpha, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which I'm pretty sure was already released, but whatever you say, list. Shadows Awakening, Slime Rancher, Super Street the Game, The Long Dark, Elia Episode 1, Arcade Islands Volume 1, Dead Age, Immortal Unchained, NASCAR Heat 3, NBA 2K19 20th Anniversary Edition, and NBA Live 19. Moving on, Nintendo Switch next week. What a list! The Switch will finally be getting I didn't know that wasn't released. Yooka-Laylee is scheduled for early next week, followed by Claws of Furry, God Wars The Complete Legend, God Wars The Labyrinth of Yomi, Moonfall Ultimate, Ninja Clash of Carrots, Planet Alpha, Son of a Witch. On the 5th, there's Mario Tennis Aces Nintendo Switch console bundle, so if you don't have Tennis Aces, you don't have a Switch, you pick that up. 6th gets us Broforce, Gone Home, Kentucky Robo Chicken, Lifeless Planet Premiere Edition on the 7th, Mummy Pinball, NBA 2K19 20th Anniversary Edition. Okay, that's a game name. Sigi, A Fart for Melusina. I didn't misread that. Okay. Sigi, A Fart for Melusina comes out on Nintendo Switch on the 7th. And then, why do I want to say NBA? SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy and Super Inefficient Golf. And there's another listing for Dust and Elysian Tale on the 10th. Weird. 3DS, though, next week is getting Yokai Watch Blasters Red Cat Core and Yokai Watch Blasters White Dog Squad, while the Vita next week is getting God Wars The Labyrinth of Yomi and Salt and Sanctuary. So that wraps up our game releases for this week and next week. What about anime in theaters? Let's see. Oh, first of all, Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden Part 1 and 2 double feature is in theaters in theaters like now until September 15th. See local theaters for specific dates. Let's see. Any other listings? Nothing else for this month. But next month, oh yeah, Perfect Blue is going to be in theaters September 6th and September 10th, 6th September 6th subbed, September 10th dubbed. Perfect Blue is a good bit of a classic, so that's nice. And then Dragon Ball Z Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, will be in theaters September 15th and September 17th, both dubbed. Haikyuu the movie, Battle of Concepts, September 19th subbed. And then Digimon Adventures Tri Future will be in theaters September 20th, dubbed. And then My Neighbor Totoro will be in theaters September 30th, dubbed, October 1st, subbed, and October 3rd, dubbed. So, there we go. That wraps up our new game releases for this week and next week. What anime are in theaters for the next bit of time, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me today on GameBabble Live, and please stay tuned for more, as we will most certainly be discussing a whole lot of things. There's all sorts of stuff going on now because, well, as you could tell from that rather lengthy game release list, it would appear it is time to start those Christmas releases. Time to get things in the stores, on the shelves, and on people's Christmas lists. So, everything's coming out. This is like the big release season starts 3, 2, 1 now. Big release season. Welcome to big release season. Yeah, so there's stuff to discuss and some tragedies, unfortunately, so we'll talk about those too, but man, there's a lot of stuff going on, so this is going to be quite the show. I hope you will stay tuned and enjoy the show, but until then, it is time to kick you back to the music. So here is The Story by Fivefold, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you after the break with more GameBabble Live. That was Cavalier by The Casanova here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Welcome back once again to the show. It's good to be here, and yeah. So, before the break, of course, we kicked the show off with the new game releases for this week and next week, and what anime are in theaters. And let me just say, guess it's time for the big Christmas releases, huh? Yeah, lots of games hitting store shelves very suddenly. Like, last week there was barely anything. Week before that, there was really barely anything. But then this week, no, just all the games, get them in there. It's almost September. We gotta go. We gotta move. That seems to be the general attitude of game companies, right now. So, the early releases for Christmas are definitely hitting store shelves. And that's a good time. That's a good thing. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of games coming out. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to cover, and unfortunately, my big list of things to talk about decided to go poop itself. So I'm trying to bring that up. But the one thing I do remember, I mean, other than the tragedies, we'll get to those later. The one thing I do remember, though, is the Soul Calibur 6 news. I need to make a correction. At the top of the show last week, I mentioned that Tira was going to be pre-ordered DLC for Soul Calibur 6, and I went on a pretty lengthy segment talking about why, while pre-orders kinda suck, why companies push them so hard and why they're so important. You know what? Doesn't matter. Tira's not pre-ordered DLC. She's just day one DLC. It was confusing because they were also, when they were announcing Tira as pre-ordered, when they were announcing Tira as DLC, they were trying to do it simultaneously while encouraging people to pre-order the season pass. And so wires got crossed, and now people are actually even more angry. Because if she was a pre-order DLC, I'd be like, okay, that's crappy, but I understand this is what you're doing instead of online passes. A lot of people are doing it. It sucks that it's one character, but anyone who's really interested in Soul Calibur, they're going to pick it up day one, so they'll have the character. Nope. Gotta pay extra if you like Tira. And they're like, well, we didn't initially intend to put her in the game. Dude, you have announced Tira, your first DLC character, who has been in the game since Soul Calibur 3, for well more than a decade. You have announced her before finishing announcing the rest of the main roster, which of course calls into question what other DLC characters there are going to be. How many of these are going to be characters that used to be in the franchise but got cut out? Am I going to have to pay money in order to get Lizard Man proper in my game? Am I going to have to pay extra money to get a bunch of other characters? It's pretty shady, crappy things that they're doing this. But this isn't the only news, because the newest news is that, get this, apparently it took a lot of convincing to get Namco to even make Soul Calibur 6. They didn't initially want to. They pushed really hard for it. And while the developer says we don't want to try to guilt trip people into buying the game, but yeah, if this isn't successful, there's not going to be another Soul Calibur. I'm just going to be honest and tell you there's not going to be another Soul Calibur even if this is successful. You know why? Because Namco, for reasons beyond human comprehension, don't care about Soul Calibur. See, believe it or not, Soul Calibur 4 was actually supposed to be the last one. No one informed anyone of this, and my general response to Soul Calibur 4 was, this is a really nice start, I can't wait to see the next game. Because Soul Calibur 4 was one of the first big fighting games released last generation. It came out before Street Fighter 4, okay? It was like, there was Dead or Alive 4 at launch, followed by Battle Fantasia, and then it was Soul Calibur 4. Soul Calibur 4 was a really early release last generation, looked gorgeous, still looks gorgeous, as you can tell because they're still using those same character models in Soul Calibur 6. But, it was a good start. It needed more stages, it could use more polish, it could have been touched up, but Soul Calibur 4 was a good start. And Namco was just like, no, we're done. They didn't tell anyone that was the end of the series. They were just like, no, we're ending the series at Soul Calibur 4. And it all got really stupid because there was one year where they announced 5 different Tekken games all at once. And everyone was like, wow, that's a lot of Tekken games. So when's the next Soul Calibur? And Namco was all like, oh, the series is done. And everyone was like, what do you mean the series is done? I love Soul Calibur. And so they rushed out Soul Calibur 5, which was like hastily cobbled together in less than a year, and I have like an unending wellspring of hatred for Soul Calibur 5. It is one of just the worst ideas Namco ever had on multiple levels. But Soul Calibur 5 was supposed to be the end of this, that was like a rushed, barely created game. And apparently it was relatively successful for what it was, even though it was basically Soul Calibur 4 with less. Now, and I always said, as much as I hated Soul Calibur 5, I would buy Soul Calibur 6 because I like Soul Calibur, and 5 was just a massive screw-up. I'm not, like, done with the series. But now, we have this huge break between Soul Calibur 5 and 6. 6 is flagrantly, I want to emphasize this, flagrantly being rushed to market. Because this thing was, like, announced and is going to be in our hands in, like, a couple of weeks. In fact, let's go look that up. When are we expecting Soul Calibur 6? Soul Calibur 6. Yeah, that's how you spell it. Soul Calibur 6 is set to come out, okay, it's a little more than a couple weeks. October 19th. So, we got over a month. A month and a half. Either way, Soul Calibur 6 is like almost here. And it was announced like, when was it announced? Like, it was announced like back in summer. Like, this thing is coming out really, really fast. And considering they're recycling the character models from Soul Calibur 4, recycling a lot of move data, I'm seeing a lot of recycled content, I do worry that it might just wind up being Soul Calibur 4 again. Thankfully, they have shown that they're going to have some kind of wacky create a character story mode with multiple races, which I'm very excited about. And that alone will probably be enough to calm my rage. But yeah, I'm concerned about the character roster. I'm concerned about Tira. This is one of the things. Tira was in Soul Calibur 4. Her moveset and much of her character model is being taken from Soul Calibur 4. I mean, they're giving her a new outfit. They're switching up the hairstyle, sure. Much of what she is, though, is taken from Soul Calibur 4. As is the case with all of these characters. And so it is really awkward that they're like, oh, hey, here's Soul Calibur 6, and it's going to be a lot like Soul Calibur 4, but, with possibly missing a lot of content. It's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out, and I feel like I'm being very much roped along in this one. But this isn't the only fighting game but the worst part is, I can't stress this enough. Getting back to Soul Calibur before I move on, I can't stress this enough. Soul Calibur has never been a failure. Every Soul Calibur game has sold well, has been popular. Even Soul Calibur 5, for that first, year and a half, people made all sorts of excuses for that game. People love Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur has a sizable player base. I know a lot of... It's not just Tekken with swords. I hate it when people call it Tekken with swords, because a lot of folks like it more than Tekken. I like it more than Tekken. It plays completely different from Tekken. And that's the thing. I know a lot of people who prefer Soul Calibur over Tekken, and the people who don't generally play both Tekken and Soul Calibur. They still like the game. I don't actually know anyone who doesn't like Soul Calibur, actually. I think I might be the closest person to someone who doesn't like Soul Calibur, and I'm still, against my better judgment, planning on picking up Soul Calibur 6. I still picked up Soul Calibur 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 and Edge. And I'm like the closest to someone who doesn't like the game that I know of. Everyone loves Soul Calibur. Indeed, I know a lot of people who don't like fighting games that make the exception for Soul Calibur. I actually have a strong belief that Soul Calibur may have the largest female player base of any fighting game out there, thanks in large part to that GameCube release having Link in it. Soul Calibur 2, remember that? Yeah, so Soul Calibur has push, it has draw. And the only reason it hasn't had a major spot in esports is because Namco keeps dropping the ball. Do you know what happened with Tekken 7? Tekken 7 was in Japanese arcades for 2 to 3 years before it even came home, and even then the home release felt like it didn't have as much content as it should have, but they spent years building up and fleshing out and building upon Tekken 7. They gave that game so much time and so much energy and so much resources. And Soul Calibur 6? Just go out there. They're just throwing it out there. They're barely putting any time and effort and work into it. And the Soul Calibur team has talked about this. There have been many interviews where the Soul Calibur team is like, yeah, we can't work on our game. Namco doesn't care about us. We keep being split between working on Soul Calibur and working on more stuff for Tekken. Freaking Namco keeps cannibalizing the Soul Calibur series because they care more about Tekken. And that pisses me off because I can't stand Tekken. I really try. I did enjoy Tekken Tag Tournament, but all the characters I actually like were introduced in Tekken 4 and beyond, so they're not in Tekken Tag Tournament. I mean, Yoshimitsu's in there. I did a Yoshimitsu Zhao Yu team that was alright, but all the characters I like are the weird ones they've been adding recently. Alisa is easily my main, but none of the ones after Tekken Tag Tournament played as well. Just kind of a fact. I don't know, Tekken never sat well with me. I don't like its playstyle. I know a lot of people do. I know St. Louis is pretty much Tekken country, has been for a while. I believe one of the best Tekken players in the world actually lives here. I forget his name, though, and I don't know if he retired. This was years ago. I remember seeing his name in high scoreboards at the Mills for Tekken 5. I don't remember who it was. Anyway, I understand Tekken is big. I understand I live in Tekken country. But Soul Calibur really shouldn't be screwed over the way it is, and it pisses me off. Something fierce that this is the thing they're doing. But of course, as I was saying, this isn't the only fighting game coming out that has me steamed. Cripes. Dead or Alive 6 freaking triggers me. When people start giving me new Dead or Alive 6 news, I usually just have to spend an hour screaming. Because I'm just so angry at this game. Especially with the newest news. Get this. Dead or Alive 6 is 15% complete. It comes out early 2019. 15% complete. Like, I think they were looking at January, so that's like, it's 15% complete in August, September, October, November, December. They have like 5 months to do the rest of... What the crap? They are claiming that they do have actual new character models for DOA 6. They are claiming they have a new graphics engine. They are claiming that they're redoing all this stuff. But DOA 6 is being rushed out way too fast. It is being thrown together in less than a year. And it is following up what I personally consider to be the best entry in the series, which has had 5 years of post-release development to be fleshed out and blossom into a truly great fighting game. And, like, because you have to remember, I know, DOA 5, Dead or Alive 5, received monthly DLC for over a year. It has tons of DLC. There's thousands of dollars of downloadable costumes for Dead or Alive 5. I am aware of this. I know how much that pisses people off, but guess what? That helped fund the fact that they kept the game updated, that they kept adding new stages, new moves, constantly were making balance tweaks. I would say Dead or Alive 5 was one of the most supported fighting games of all time. And the final version of it is a very meaty, fleshed out game with a lot of content that plays very, very well. I don't think Dead or Alive 6 can top this. And I think it is going to suck when the game comes out because there's no way this game is going to be released feature complete. it is going to, like, they are pretty much telling us by saying the game is 15% done now, 5 months before it's released. That is pretty much Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo saying, yeah, we're releasing a beta and then we'll patch it together later. Which, yeah, so don't buy the game. I'll keep y'all posted if I can, but don't buy it. I thankfully found out GameFly is still in business. That's my solution, because I want to review this game. Considering how much I have stuck with Dead or Alive 5 throughout the years, I want to find out what Dead or Alive 6 launch is like, but I am not pre-ordering that game. I am not buying that game, not unless I rent it and it winds up blowing my mind and being something more than just a worse version of Dead or Alive 5, which is what I fully expect it to be. So that is where I'm at when it comes to fighting games today. Good times. I'd love to tell you about Blade Strangers, but part of the reason I was late was because I was trying to swing by GameStop and pick up a copy of it, so that way I could play it on my Switch during the breaks and tell you what it's like. Unfortunately, the physical copies have not come in. We don't know if they've come in anywhere. I will check on that, but yeah, it might just be digital only, and at that price tag, I am not paying for digital only. I need a physical copy. So, yeah, I'll keep you posted on what happens with Blade Strangers. But until then, here is I Still Miss You by Matt Wynn here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And stay tuned for more video game news and information after the break. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy I Still Miss You by Matt Wynn here on 89.5 FM. That was Cavalier by the Casanova here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Welcome back once again to the show. It's good to be here, and yeah. So, before the break, of course, we kicked the show off with the new game releases for this week and next week, and what anime are in theaters, and let me just say, guess it's time for the big Christmas releases, huh? Yeah, lots of games hitting store shelves very suddenly, like, last week there was barely anything, week before that there was really barely anything. But then this week, no, just all the games, get them in there, it's almost September, we gotta go, we gotta move! That seems to be the general attitude of game companies, right now. So, the early releases for Christmas are definitely hitting store shelves, and that's a good time, that's a good thing. But yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of games coming out. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to cover, and unfortunately, my big list of things to talk about decided to go poop itself. So I'm trying to bring that up, but the one thing I do remember, I mean, other than the tragedies, we'll get to those later. The one thing I do remember, though, is the Soul Calibur 6 news. I need to make a correction. At the top of the show last week, I mentioned that Tira was going to be pre-ordered DLC for Soul Calibur 6, and I went on a pretty lengthy segment talking about why, while pre-orders kinda suck, why companies push them so hard and why they're so important. You know what, doesn't matter. Tira's not pre-ordered DLC. She's just day one DLC. It was confusing because they were also, when they were announcing Tira as pre-ordered, when they were announcing Tira as DLC, they were trying to do it simultaneously while encouraging people to pre-order the season pass. And so wires got crossed, and now people are actually even more angry. Because if she was a pre-order DLC, I'd be like, okay, that's crappy, but I understand this is what you're doing instead of online passes. A lot of people are doing it. It sucks that it's one character, but anyone who's really interested in Soul Calibur, they're going to pick it up day one, so they'll have the character. Nope. Gotta pay extra if you like Tira. And they're like, well, we didn't initially intend to put her in the game. Dude, you have announced Tira. your first DLC character, who has been in the game since Soul Calibur 3 for well more than a decade, you have announced her before finishing announcing the rest of the main roster, which of course calls into question what other DLC characters there are going to be. How many of these are going to be characters that used to be in the franchise but got cut out? Am I going to have to pay money in order to get Lizard Man proper in my game? Am I going to have to pay extra money to get a bunch of other characters? It's pretty shady, crappy things that they're doing this. But this isn't the only news, because the newest news is that, get this, apparently it took a lot of convincing to get Namco to even make Soul Calibur 6. They didn't initially want to, they pushed really hard for it, and while the developer says we don't want to try to guilt trip people into buying the game, but yeah, if this isn't successful, there's not going to be another Soul Calibur. I'm just going to be honest and tell you there's not going to be another Soul Calibur even if this is successful. You know why? Because Namco, for reasons beyond human comprehension, don't care about Soul Calibur. See, believe it or not, Soul Calibur 4 was actually supposed to be the last one. No one informed anyone of this, and the general response to my general response to Soul Calibur 4 was, this is a really nice start, I can't wait to see the next game. Because Soul Calibur 4 was one of the first big fighting games released last generation. It came out before Street Fighter 4, okay? It was like there was Dead or Alive 4 at launch, followed by Battle Fantasia, and then it was Soul Calibur 4. Soul Calibur 4 was a really early release last generation, looked gorgeous, still looks gorgeous, as you can tell because they're still using those same character models in Soul Calibur 6. But, it was a good start. It needed more stages, it could use more polish, it could have been touched up, but Soul Calibur 4 was a good start. And Namco was just like, no, we're done. They didn't tell anyone that was the end of the series. They were just like, no, we're ending the series at Soul Calibur 4. And it all got really stupid because there was one year where they announced 5 different Tekken games all at once. And everyone was like, wow, that's a lot of Tekken games. So when's the next Soul Calibur? And Namco was all like, oh, the series is done. And everyone was like, what do you mean the series is done? I love Soul Calibur. And so they rushed out Soul Calibur 5, which was like hastily cobbled together in less than a year. And I have like an unending wellspring of hatred for Soul Calibur 5. It is one of just the worst ideas Namco ever had on multiple levels. But Soul Calibur 5 was supposed to be the end of this, that was like a rushed, barely created game. And apparently it was relatively successful for what it was, even though it was basically Soul Calibur 4 with less. Now, and I always said, as much as I hated Soul Calibur 5, I would buy Soul Calibur 6 because I like Soul Calibur, and 5 was just a massive screw-up. I'm not, done with the series. But now, we have this huge break between Soul Calibur 5 and 6. 6 is flagrantly, I want to emphasize this, flagrantly being rushed to market. Because this thing was, announced and is going to be in our hands in, a couple of weeks. In fact, let's go look that up. When are we expecting Soul Calibur 6? Soul Calibur 6. Yeah, that's how you spell it. Soul Calibur 6 is set to come out, okay, it's a little more than a couple weeks. October 19th. So, we got over a month. A month and a half. Either way, Soul Calibur 6 is, almost here. And it was announced, when was it announced? It was announced, back in summer. This thing is coming out really, really fast. And considering they're recycling the character models from Soul Calibur 4, recycling a lot of move data, I'm seeing a lot of recycled content, I do worry that it might just wind up being Soul Calibur 4 again. Thankfully, they have shown that they're going to have some kind of wacky create a character story mode with multiple races, which I'm very excited about. And that alone will probably be enough to calm my rage. But yeah, I'm I'm concerned about the character roster. I'm concerned about Tira. This is one of the things. Tira was in Soul Calibur 4. Her moveset and much of her character model is being taken from Soul Calibur 4. I mean, they're giving her a new outfit. They're switching up the hairstyle, sure. Much of what she is, though, is taken from Soul Calibur 4. As is the case with all of these characters. And so it is really awkward that they're like, oh, hey, here's Soul Calibur 6, and it's going to be a lot like Soul Calibur 4, but, with possibly missing a lot of content. It's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out, and I feel like I'm being very much roped along in this one. But this isn't the only fighting game but the worst part is, I can't stress this enough. Getting back to Soul Calibur before I move on, I can't stress this enough. Soul Calibur has never been a failure. Every Soul Calibur game has sold well, has been popular. Even Soul Calibur 5, for that first, year and a half, people made all sorts of excuses for that game. People love Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur has a sizable player base. I know a lot of... It's not just Tekken with swords. I hate it when people call it Tekken with swords, because a lot of folks like it more than Tekken. I like it more than Tekken. It plays completely different from Tekken. And that's the thing. I know a lot of people who prefer Soul Calibur over Tekken, and the people who don't generally play both Tekken and Soul Calibur. They still like the game. I don't actually know anyone who doesn't like Soul Calibur, actually. I think I might be the closest person to someone who doesn't like Soul Calibur, and I'm still, against my better judgment, planning on picking up Soul Calibur 6. I still picked up Soul Calibur 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 and Edge. And I'm the closest to someone who doesn't like the game that I know of. Everyone loves Soul Calibur. Indeed, I know a lot of people who don't like fighting games that make the exception for Soul Calibur. I actually have a strong belief that Soul Calibur may have the largest female player base of any fighting game out there, thanks in large part to that GameCube release having Link in it. Soul Calibur 2, remember that? Yeah, so Soul Calibur has, push, it has draw. And the only reason it hasn't had a major spot in esports is because Namco keeps dropping the ball. Do you know what happened with Tekken 7? Tekken 7 was in Japanese arcades for 2 to 3 years before it even came home, and even then the home release felt like it didn't have as much content as it should have, but they spent years building up and fleshing out and building upon Tekken 7. They gave that game so much time and so much energy and so much resources. And Soul Calibur 6? Just go out there. They're just throwing it out there. They're barely putting any time and effort and work into it. And the Soul Calibur team has talked about this. There have been many interviews where the Soul Calibur team is like, yeah, we can't work on our game. Namco doesn't care about us. We keep being split between working on Soul Calibur and working on more stuff for Tekken. Freaking Namco keeps cannibalizing the Soul Calibur series because they care more about Tekken. And that pisses me off because I can't stand Tekken. I really try. I did enjoy Tekken Tag Tournament, but all the characters I actually like were introduced in Tekken 4 and beyond, so they're not in Tekken Tag Tournament. I mean, Yoshimitsu's in there. I did a Yoshimitsu Zhao Yu team that was alright, but all the characters I like are the weird ones they've been adding recently. Alisa is easily my main, but none of the ones after Tekken Tag Tournament played as well. Just kind of a fact. I don't know, Tekken never sat well with me. I don't like its playstyle. I know a lot of people do. I know St. Louis is pretty much Tekken country, has been for a while. I believe one of the best Tekken players in the world actually lives here. I forget his name, though, and I don't know if he retired. This was years ago. I remember seeing his name in high scoreboards at the Mills for Tekken 5. I don't remember who it was. Anyway, I understand Tekken is big. I understand I live in Tekken country. But Soul Calibur really shouldn't be screwed over the way it is. And it pisses me off. Something fierce that this is the thing they're doing. But of course, as I was saying, this isn't the only fighting game coming out that has me steamed. Cripes. Dead or Alive 6 freaking triggers me. When people start giving me new Dead or Alive 6 news, I usually just have to spend an hour screaming. Because I'm just so angry at this game. Especially with the newest news. Get this. Dead or Alive 6 is 15% complete. It comes out early 2019. 15% complete. Like, I think they were looking at January, so that's like, it's 15% complete in August, September, October, November, December. They have like 5 months to do the rest of... What the crap? They are claiming that they do have actual new character models for DOA 6. They are claiming they have a new graphics engine. They are claiming that they're redoing all this stuff. But DOA 6 is being rushed out way too fast. It is being thrown together in less than a year. And it is following up what I personally consider to be the best entry in the series, which has had 5 years of post-release development to be fleshed out and blossom into a truly great fighting game. And, like, because you have to remember, I know, DOA 5, Dead or Alive 5, received monthly DLC for over a year. It has tons of DLC. There's thousands of dollars of downloadable costumes for Dead or Alive 5. I am aware of this. I know how much that pisses people off, but guess what? That helped fund the fact that they kept the game updated, that they kept adding new stages, new moves, constantly were making balance tweaks. I would say Dead or Alive 5 was one of the most supported fighting games of all time. And the final version of it is a very meaty, fleshed out game with a lot of content that plays very, very well. I don't think Dead or Alive 6 can top this. And I think it is going to suck when the game comes out because there's no way this game is going to be released feature complete. It is going to, like, they are pretty much telling us by saying the game is 15% done now, 5 months before it's released. That is pretty much Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo saying, yeah, we're releasing a beta and then we'll patch it together later. Which, yeah, so don't buy the game. I'll keep y'all posted if I can, but don't buy it. I thankfully found out GameFly is still in business. That's my solution, because I want to review this game. Considering how much I have stuck with Dead or Alive 5 throughout the years, I want to find out what Dead or Alive 6 launch is like, but I am not pre-ordering that game. I am not buying that game, not unless I rent it and it winds up blowing my mind and being something more than just a worse version of Dead or Alive 5, which is what I fully expect it to be. So that is where I'm at when it comes to fighting games today. Good times. I'd love to tell you about Blade Strangers, but part of the reason I was late was because I was trying to swing by GameStop and pick up a copy of it, so that way I could play it on my Switch during the breaks and tell you what it's like. Unfortunately, the physical copies have not come in. We don't know if they've come in anywhere. I will check on that, but yeah, it might just be digital only, and at that price tag, I am not paying for digital only. I need a physical copy. So, yeah, I'll keep you posted on what happens with Blade Strangers. But until then, here is I Still Miss You by Matt Wynn here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And stay tuned for more video game news and information after the break. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy I Still Miss You by Matt Wynn here on 89.5 FM. That was Expectations by Magic here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So I don't feel like getting into depressing things quite yet, or anger-inducing things, especially after that last segment. So let's move on to the other big news, big news that hit yesterday. You ain't even gonna believe this one, but Streets of Rage 4 has been announced. There is a trailer up. It is finally happening. Streets of Rage 4 is a real game. It's happening. We're getting Streets of Rage 4 after all these years. And all I can say is, really? This was the tech demo that convinced us? Okay, whatever you say. In the off chance that you are unfamiliar with the Streets of Rage series, Streets of Rage is the definitive beat-em-up series of the Sega Genesis. The first one was a very early release. The second one, though, has gone down in history as a legend, and the third one got really screwed up for its US release. People used to argue if the second one or the Japanese third one was the best one, but that no longer seems to be the case. Everyone pretty much agrees Streets of Rage 2 is the best, but a lot of people consider Streets of Rage 2 to be one of the greatest beat-em-ups of all time. They love it. Its legendary status has only grown throughout the years, and yet somehow, we never got Streets of Rage 4. Mostly because Sega just didn't really know or care about it. And it's funny because there's so many people have wanted a Streets of Rage 4 for so long. There have been like 5, 6, maybe even 7 different major attempts at a Streets of Rage 4. The earliest one we know of was actually Fighting Force. Fighting Force was the old PS1 game was originally meant to be Streets of Rage 4. That was the original plan. The developers were like, we want to make Streets of Rage 4. Sega turned them down, so they were like, fine, we'll call it Fighting Force. We'll make our own characters and release it on PS1. And thank goodness that game is crap. I know a lot of people have fond memories of it, and it was one of those good for its time. But time has been very cruel to Fighting Force. It does not hold up well at all. I know, I've played it recently. But then, with the release of the Dreamcast, Sega themselves were working on a Streets of Rage 4. There was an early alpha build, which quite a few screenshots of that seem to exist and are floating around. But then Sega of America took one look at it and said, what the heck is a Streets of Rage? And the project got canceled. So that didn't happen. We got Spike out as sort of a spiritual successor to Streets of Rage, but Streets of Rage 4 proper never really happened. Then, of course, there's the infamous Dong Dong Never Die, a Chinese-made fighting game where when you beat it, there's an advertisement for their Streets of Rage 4. They, created the game to show their prowess in making a fighting game, and they were like, yeah, no, we're gonna make Streets of Rage 4 next. But obviously, that never happened. And disappointingly, I believe the Dong Dong Never Die team broke up, or I don't know what the situation is, because I think they got back together to do a better-looking fighting game, but it was online MMO-ish thing. I don't know. But there were at least 2 others, and that's not even getting into things like the Streets of Rage remake or Fightin' Rage and any number of different... So many games pay homage to Streets of Rage, even in their title, including a indie game with silly digitized sprites called Streets of Fury. And of all the games, that's the one that seems to have convinced Sega to let someone finally make a Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage 4 is being made by the most improbable and very French dream team I've ever seen. It's being produced by, number one, .mu, the company that has been doing crappy emulations of Neo Geo games with the distinct exception of Windjammers. They put in the time to make the Windjammers port not crap, but pretty much all the other ports of Metal Slug and Twinkle Star Sprites that .mu has been doing have been crap and people have complained about them. But now they're doing Windjammers too, and they're doing Streets of Rage 4. Moving on, we have Lizard Cube. And if there is one company we can have some faith in, it's Lizard Cube. They're the people who did that Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap remake. You know, the one with the gorgeous, well-animated HD sprites that you can, with a push of a button, switch back to the original sprites and graphic, or the original sprites and music, and then with the push of a button, switch them back to HD, is an incredible, incredible, faithful, beautiful HD remake of a Sega Master System classic. And I give Lizard Cube all the applause. They are clearly in charge of the sprites for Streets of Rage 4, and it's looking good. The last company is the weirdest one. It's Guard Crush, makers of Streets of Fury, the goofy-looking kind of Guardian Heroes-esque beat-em-up that I believe was an Xbox Live indie game before it got its Steam port. I've never played it myself. It claims to have some pretty deep combat, but a friend of mine says it's also really jank. So I don't know what to even make of Streets of Fury, but the Streets of Fury people are the people making Streets of Rage 4, along with Lizard Cube and .mu. So, okay, we've got, like, one company that I have complete faith in, one company I'm a little questionable about, and one company I don't know what to make of, all coming together to make Streets of Rage 4. And now that I think of it, this is the Sonic Mania of Streets of Rage, isn't it? It only now occurred to me. Sonic Mania was effectively a fan game. You had this one guy who loved Sonic so much, Christian Whitehead. He loved Sonic so much, he reverse engineered the entire Sonic engine and how it works, so that way he could remake Sonic CD in widescreen, in HD, with both music options. That's how much he loved Sonic. And after doing a couple remakes for Sega, he was allowed to make his own actual official Sonic game that has received nothing but praise and adoration, considered to be one of the best games of last year. A lot of people love it. Sonic Mania is like, it's like a legend. People are like, this is what we wanted out of a Sonic game. Very, 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 very few people were disappointed in it. For the most part, Sonic Mania was a complete home run for Sega. And now it's just gotten its enhanced re-release that has Mighty and Ray in it. But, yeah, so Sonic Mania was a very successful thing. So it's pretty clear that Sega's like, what other classic game that we don't really care about but everyone else does is out there? Oh, look, Streets of Rage. It's not like people have spent the past, 2 decades plus desperately trying to get us to make a Streets of Rage 4. Hey, what if we actually let some of those people make a Streets of Rage 4? What do we got to lose? A bad Streets of Rage game? Psh, we weren't even gonna make one. So, I mean, it is true. They have nothing to lose. Sega doesn't care about Streets of Rage. Everyone else does. Just do it. So, we're getting Streets of Rage 4. The only thing is, everyone else is like, dude, why didn't you get the Streets of Rage remake people to do it? Because they did a really good job on Streets of Rage remake, that thing that you unceremoniously canceled and all that. It was a fan project. It's got a weird history behind it that I don't fully understand. But either way, it does kind of suck that they didn't get the Streets of Rage remake people to do it. But yeah, we're getting a new Streets of Rage. And that's wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people will be very, very, very happy to know that Streets of Rage 4 is now real, and I am glad to report that. Also, speaking of Sega, I've mentioned that Shenmue 1 and 2 are out. Apparently they have a boxed release. I saw it at GameStop. It definitely has some glitches, especially in cutscenes. I don't know what causes it, but eventually the cutscenes will screw up and you'll have to save and reload. Otherwise, every subsequent cutscene is going to be screwed up. Definitely seems like a big bug. But other than that, Shenmue 1 and 2, they haven't really redone the graphics at all, but they do give a Japanese voice option, so if you ever wanted to actually take Shenmue seriously, that's there. But at the same time, the legendarily terrible dub of Shenmue is like half the fun, because people will open their mouths and the noises that come out of them are just not what you expect. Much like how Shenmue is not what anyone expects. The game is a freaking legend in the industry, which some people have considered it the greatest game of all time, and other people have considered it one of the worst games of all time. And with good reason. A lot of people, I think, picking up Shenmue now are probably playing the first game and going, this is what all the fuss was about? See, Shenmue was a very weird game. It focused so much on realism and simulation and being, like, accurate to all these things that it's barely a game. At least the first one is. I hear the second one improved a lot of things, but the first game really turned people off. The plot of Shenmue is that it's 1986, and a mysterious man shows up at the Hazuki Dojo and kills Ryo Hazuki's dad, and steals this dragon mirror. And now Ryo is like, well, I'm gonna go hunt this guy down. Apparently his name is Lan Di. I have the other mirror, which is the Phoenix mirror, and I'm gonna go get revenge on him. But he doesn't really know where to start. And that's sort of where our game begins. It is a very accurate, realistic portrayal of a small, tiny little section of Japan in 1986. All the different NPCs have names and unique, like, daily routines and things they do. And they had full character profiles and, the works. There's a ton of stuff you can do around this tiny little town, and they even have the whole thing set up where the weather on each specific day is actually accurate to the weather that was actually in that region in Japan in 1986, at least according to whatever logs they could find. And on top of that, you could go to the arcade and you could play arcade games, and it was this incredibly detailed game. Pick up every object on a shelf and look at it. They're all individually rendered and textured. You could go to your house and open every single drawer in the house. And, so many amazing little tiny details. And what do you do in the game? You wait. Shenmue was originally planned as like a Virtua Fighter RPG. And the combat's pretty cool because it actually takes a huge chunk from Virtua Fighter. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But the problem is, the problem is that how do I put it? The problem with, Shenmue is the fact that, that there isn't a lot of combat in it. You don't really get into random street brawls like you do in Yakuza. There's very few fights in the entire game. You spend the grand majority of Shenmue walking around town, talking to random strangers, asking where this or that is. Like the infamous, where can I find sailors thing. That is one of the most famous parts of Shenmue, is when you're walking around town going, do you know where sailors hang out? And that's an accurate portrayal of the game. That is most of what you do. The rest of what you do is waiting. Because every time you finally find what you're looking for, there's a big cutscene, which always ends with someone going, oh, show up tomorrow at this time, and I'll be waiting for you. So then you have to wait until tomorrow, and wait for that time, and then the next bit of the game will happen. And at the end of that, show up tomorrow at this time, at this location. This happens over and over and over again. I've been watching a ton of people try to stream this game, and it is driving them to absolute madness, because in the first game, I hear they have one in the second game, but in the first game, there's no time skip option. So you're just sitting around waiting for events to happen, watching your stupid clock, trying to find something to keep you busy during that time period. It's dumb. In all honesty, Shenmue was not a well thought out game, like as a game. They thought about it so much in terms of realism and accuracy and portraying all these little details that as a game, it just sort of fell apart. But it also served as the groundwork for Yakuza. Pretty much the entire, though we don't know the full story. I know that the head guy behind Shenmue, Yu Suzuki, was not involved with Yakuza. But some of the Shenmue team supposedly was. And pretty much the entire idea behind the Yakuza series is, let's do Shenmue right. How do we make Shenmue into a good game? And the general idea was less focus on minute, intricate detail, more focus on having fun, more focus on getting into fights. Well, how do we get into more fights? How do we get that to happen? Ryo's a good boy. He doesn't just randomly brawl with strangers in the street. I mean, who would do that except a Yakuza? Okay, we'll make the main character a Yakuza. He'll constantly get into fights with other Yakuzas and street punks who will just come up to him on the street, and you could bash their faces in. And the result was, when the first Yakuza came out, pretty much all the Japanese magazines described it as Shenmue, but way better. And that's what Yakuza kind of is. But yeah, Shenmue 1 is rough. I wish you the best of luck, but at the same time, you gotta respect its legacy. Which, of course, this is where you're going to say, then why was everyone so excited about Shenmue 3? See, Shenmue 3 was announced a couple E3s ago. They announced the Kickstarter. They did the Kickstarter. It's funded. It's in development. It's scheduled to come out pretty much exactly 1 year from now. Why was everyone so excited about Shenmue 3? Well, Shenmue was set to be like this 17-part series. Shenmue was set to be long. At the time when it was produced, Shenmue was the most expensive video game ever made, and they were going to make it a 17-part series, and it was going to be this legendary epic. Except the Dreamcast flopped. Shenmue 2 didn't get a Dreamcast release in America. It got an Xbox release we got it on Xbox, and then that was it. We got Shenmue 1, we got Shenmue 2, and Shenmue 2, of course, since this is supposed to be a 17-part series, it kind of just ends on a cliffhanger, really unfulfilled, not much has happened, and so people are going, can you wrap this up? And Sega, promised maybe we'll make a Shenmue 3. At one point, they were looking at making a Shenmue Online. Shenmue was supposed to be a thing. Unfortunately, it just never came to fruition. Shenmue wasn't that successful. It wasn't that good. People didn't really, it has a cult following, but Shenmue is Shenmue. There was no way they could justify getting the ludicrous funds together to produce a Shenmue 3. And so the series just sort of ends. It just stops. So a lot of people were really happy. People have been clamoring for a Shenmue 3 because they just want the story to end. And so a lot of people were really happy when Yu Suzuki said, hey, I've got my own company now. We got the go-ahead to make Shenmue 3. Here's a Kickstarter. If this is successful, we're making Shenmue 3. We're gonna wrap up the story. That's why people were so excited. Because they've been on this long, ludicrous odyssey, this bizarre dream project for so long, and it never ended. It just stopped. And they're like, can we get a conclusion? Can we wrap this up? Finish the story of Shenmue, and now we're finally going to get that. Probably. Admittedly, Yu Suzuki actually had a poll asking people if they wanted it to end on a cliffhanger, if they wanted them to leave it open for a Shenmue 4. I believe the general response was no Shenmue 4. You finish it at 3. We've just wrap it up. Give us the ending. Let us finish the fight. And that's the tale of Shenmue. All right. Cripes. So, I do believe it is time now to finally take a break, which I look forward to. I need a drink. So we're going to take a break, and when we get back, I guess we'll finally cover those friggin' tragedies. Ugh. Not looking forward to that, but there is stuff to discuss there, and they are very video game related. So please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Until then, here is Jump Right In by The Urge, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. That was I Found God by Mainland, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to the show. This is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Sorry about earlier. I believe I accidentally hadn't turned the volume back up for a minute or two. But either way, we're back to the show, and it's kind of inescapable. It's time to talk about some recent video game-related tragedies. You might have already heard of this. But about, I think it was 2 days ago, there was a Madden tournament that was being streamed live on Twitch, and one of the competitors, after losing but not being knocked out of the brackets, he was still in the running. But after losing, he grabbed a gun and shot up the place. Last I heard, 11 were dead, 4 were injured. And yeah, the shooter himself has died. I believe he took his own life. I'm not 100% sure on that. But that is certainly the situation. He had a history of mental issues, had been on heavy medication, and yeah, he just lost it. One thing that I do support is utterly mocking this person. Why? Well, unfortunately, our culture is weird in that we have a bad tendency to lionize mass murderers. It's not uncommon for their names to be remembered forever, to go down in history, for movies to be made about them, for pictures of them to appear on the cover of magazines, and that's just messed up because it turns these vile psychopaths into heroes, and that needs to stop. So, a lot of people have agreed that we are just going to refer to this monster as the loser that he was, in every sense of the word, because he was so pathetic that because he lost a Madden tournament, he shot up the place. Now, apparently, he had actually won the previous year and got like $100,000 out of it, and he was still in the running for this year. He just, wasn't going to be, I don't think he was like, I don't even know what the situation is. He was still in the running, but he just lost it, shot up the place, and shot himself because he was just that pathetic. This is definitely going to be a weird one, as people, of course, will try to point fingers and blame everything they can, other than whatever is actually at fault. No one wants to just say that perhaps our mental health care system in this country is screwed up. That maybe our pharmaceutical industry has massive freaking problems. No. They'll blame guns, they'll blame video games, they'll blame men. But the truth of the matter is, it's pretty much undeniable that our mental health care system is garbage, and that our pharmaceutical industry is out of control, and there are some very, very, very dangerous prescription drugs out there. Antidepressants don't always work out for everyone, and they can drive people completely insane and do more harm than good. I speak from secondhand experience, as my mother was actually prescribed an antidepressant at one point, and she repeatedly mentions it as being one of the most horrible experiences in her life, because the antidepressant they put her on, I think it was Xanax. I'm not 100% sure, I forget, but they put her on some antidepressant, and she just, basically, she stopped caring about everything. I remember her crying over this because, yeah, she described it as like she would pick up a knife in the kitchen and look at it and go, I could stab myself with this. And that was it. Just, it didn't even matter. She would just, it's sort of a, why not? Nothing matters anymore. Kind of attitude that the drug gave her. And for some people, perhaps those drugs can do great good. But for my mother, it certainly didn't work out. And actually, I only now really thought about that. When you think about how a drug like that can make you just suddenly not realize the difference between a good and bad idea, to suddenly not care about anything, your own life, the lives of others, it's not surprising that someone who might be on one of those drugs could say, why don't I just kill everyone here and shoot myself? Why not? And that is terrifying. That is a terrifying thought, and we may have just seen the results of that. One thing that people aren't talking as much about, though, and as such I can't quite find a lot of information on it, apparently, somewhat recently, there was another gaming-related tragedy, as a CSGO modder had committed suicide by driving his McLaren at first into a school, but was stopped by a fence, and then turning around, going the wrong way on the highway, and eventually running over a mother and her daughter, and, of course, killing himself. Now, this one was interesting, because when I heard about it secondhand, from my mother, and she was like, I heard he had like $100,000 in digital assets? Is that a thing? Can that be traded for real money? We didn't know what game it was yet, and the moment I heard that, I said, it's probably if it's Counter-Strike Go, then yes, and sure enough, it was Counter-Strike Go. This one, it's still a tragedy, especially because innocent people were taken out as well. But this particular case is closer to when the stock market collapsed and all those people threw themselves out of buildings. It's one of those. Apparently, this guy had been making modded skins for CSGO, for Counter-Strike Go. And I don't play Counter-Strike Go, but the things I hear about it utterly shatter my mind. Because Counter-Strike Go, it has this loot box system where you can pay real-world money to get a box of random items, some of which are incredibly rare, and you can then take those rare items and sell them to other players. Some of these things sell for thousands of dollars, even though all it is a different color for your gun, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But people take their Counter-Strike Go excessively seriously, make tons of bad decisions on it, and so people can make a lot of money just gambling on collecting Counter-Strike Go skins and reselling them. And this guy, he did some kind of thing where he was able to sell custom skins that he had made for the game. I don't know the full story of what it was, but effectively, he had created his own business around this and was making thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars a year. Like I said, he owned a McLaren, which is a very expensive car. I think it's like beyond a Lamborghini, okay? So this guy, he was making ludicrous amounts of money entirely from selling skins in Counter-Strike Go. And then Valve popped up and changed the rules. And pretty much, they changed something about the ability to buy and sell user-modded skins or something like that. And effectively speaking, in one fell swoop, the rules had changed and this guy's business was gone. Effectively, he was like a millionaire that just got fired. He was making all this money, had piles that he was making, and his job just vanished, never to return again, and so he just killed himself. There's likely a lot more to the story than just that. As, like, when you're making that kind of money, you could be doing goofy things like oh, I'm going to buy a mansion and I'm paying that off. And, you have to pay like $50,000 a month or something. And it's like, oh, that's fine. I make that money, every day. Oh, wait, my source of income is gone. I can't make the payments on my house. I can't make the payments on my car. And I can't get, he probably didn't have a skill set that he could get a job anywhere except McDonald's. Could you imagine that? You're making $10,000 a day, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, you can't make any of your payments, and the best job you can get is working at McDonald's. That might be why he offed himself. That might be why, and it's kind of a terrifying thing, because loot boxes and downloadable content like this never should have gotten to this point. This guy never should have had the opportunity to make this kind of ludicrous money off of selling digital items in a video game. Especially because he doesn't own the video game. So this can happen. They change the rules on how things work in the game. Your source of income that you're making all this money off of is just gone. And so that one collapsed in on itself, and he wound up killing himself. And unfortunately took others with him. So there you go. Those are our video game tragedies for the day. One is a loser, one is the product of a really poorly thought out system. It's unfortunate that these are things to discuss, but they certainly have been discussed. So, let's see here. Is there... Talking about literally anything else would be an abrupt subject change, now wouldn't it? You know what? No. Let's turn things around. Speaking of companies changing the rules and driving people crazy, let's talk about the fact that Blizzard might be doing a good. You see, Blizzard has this game. It's called Hearthstone. It's an online digital card game based on the Warcraft universe. It's very popular, very successful, and they're thinking about bringing it home to consoles. However, famously, Sony is very anti-crossplay. Sony does not want... They will let a PC game and a PS4 play together. But PS4 owners and Xbox owners, they will not allow. PS4 owners and Switch owners, they will not allow. And it's entirely possible because for a minute, for one day, Fortnite accidentally let Xbox players and PlayStation players play together, and they had to fix the quote-unquote bug. It's as easy as flipping a switch. But Sony's like, no, we don't want Xbox Live users in our walled garden of PSN. Well, Blizzard has sent them an ultimatum because the interconnectivity of Hearthstone is very, very, very important. It is important that PC players and mobile players and potentially now console players are all able to play Hearthstone with one another. And if Sony's not willing to play ball, if Sony's not willing to let Hearthstone players on PS4 play with Hearthstone players on Xbox, play with Hearthstone players on PC, then Blizzard has outright told them, then you aren't getting a PS4 version of Hearthstone. You either allow crossplay or no Hearthstone for you. None of one of the biggest free-to-play games out there. Your move, Sony, and hopefully this will crack them, because all of us are angry at this. It's not like PS4 users are better or more mature than Xbox users, especially because the user bases of these consoles are constantly shifting. And right now, the lack of crossplay is one of the greatest flaws of the PlayStation 4. It is the most successful console this generation. It is incredibly successful. Sony pretty much owns this generation. They have it in the palm of their hands. But the fact that they will not let their players play with Xbox, Switch players, that's a really, really bad call on Sony's part. So, I'm hoping that this will break them. I'm hoping this will open the floodgates, and I'm hoping that this will allow for crossplay, because crossplay is very, very, very important. Because when you're talking about an online game, the more players you can play with, the better, the more competition you can have. And this is something I know firsthand from being a big fan of the PlayStation VR, because there are a lot of inexplicably multiplayer-only VR games out there. And some of them are PS4, PlayStation VR exclusive. And guess what? Those games shrivel up and vanish because they don't have anyone to play with. Meanwhile, the ones that actually allow you to play with the PC players, because for some reason Sony doesn't have a problem with PC players, the ones that actually let you play PS VR games against PC VR players, those still have competition. You can still find matches in those. I went back, I played some Spark recently, which they added crossplay to that, and yeah, I can find matches in Spark. Good luck finding matches in Starblood Arena. That, might not bode well for Firewall 0 Hour. We shall certainly see how this all plays out, but either way, yeah, Sony's handling of crossplay has been abysmal. It is a problem, and it is dragging down their system. Anyway, time for a break. Here is On the Loose by Niall Horan, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And stay tuned for more GameBabble Live. Thank you so much for listening. That was Simplify by Young the Giant, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Yes, hi. So, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get on with more, other video game news. So, cripes, where do we even begin? You know what, first of all, let's get something a bit time-sensitive out of the way. In the off chance that you care about the Square Enix RPG The Last Remnant, it is being removed from all digital storefronts in the first week of September. This is relevant because the not PS4, there's no PS4 version. The PC version is actually much better than the original Xbox 360 version. Now, in case you don't remember The Last Remnant, because you probably don't, The Last Remnant was heavily marketed early on last generation. There were not a lot of Japanese RPGs, and people were kinda starving for them. And Square Enix went out and they were like, we're gonna make an RPG, and it's gonna be called The Last Remnant, and it's going to be a Square Enix RPG, quote unquote, for the world. It was supposed to be released simultaneously in Japan and America, be released simultaneously on Xbox 360, PS3, and I think PC was also planned. It was supposed to be simultaneous, global, worldwide, everyone was supposed to love it. PS3 release never happened. PC release was delayed quite a bit, so it just came out on Xbox 360, where it flopped, and was borderline unplayable because the text was too small to read. I actually blame that game, along with a few others, for why I'm wearing glasses today. Because, yeah, if you did not have an HD TV, you could not read that text. And yeah, it came out. It was nearly impossible to read because of the small text. No one really gave a crap. It flopped. While later, quite a few months, possibly a year, it got a PC release. And this was before Steam really took off, so it does have a box PC release. I've seen it around, and a friend of mine came back to me, big RPG fan, and he was like, dude, The Last Remnant on PC is amazing. He was like, yeah, they drastically upgraded it and updated it, and the PC release of The Last Remnant is actually a really good RPG that is sorely underrated. So that's interesting. Unfortunately, yeah, I don't know how many people, that was back when PC gaming was in a rut, and I don't know how many people actually went out and bought that game on PC. Thankfully, we'll still be able to play it on 360, and I guess if you have a nice big HD TV, maybe it'll be somewhat okay. But yeah, apparently it's being removed from storefronts. I'd tell you why, but unfortunately, I think the computer here is having some issues. I really want to get in there and find out if they released it on Steam or not, and how much it's going for there. Because who knows, maybe I'll have to pick it up. We'll find out later. But anyway, yeah, so The Last Remnant, first week of September, which is, only a few days away, it is being removed from all digital storefronts. So if you want to grab a digital copy of it, last chance. Speaking of digital, Maple Story 2 launches October 10th. It is 3D and isometric and looks way more fun than regular old Maple Story. Maple Story, of course, is a very popular little MMO. Looks like it could be fun. And yeah, October 10th is the launch date. I might have to give it a spin. Moving on, a new version of the Game Paradise has been announced, which utterly baffles me. If you don't recall, the Game Paradise is a classic top-down shooter from the Sega Saturn that recently got a PS4 port in Japan, and the US release of the PS4 port was scheduled to come out this next couple weeks. I swear I actually saw it on the PSN storefront. And so I was like, super cool, it's there. I'd really like a physical release if I could find it, but I can't find anything about if it got a physical US release, if there's any US special editions. I just see it sitting there on the PSN storefront, but now I'm not even sure if it was really there or not because I'm having trouble finding it again. And now they've just announced that they're going to have a new version of it out? Why don't you just release that as DLC for the existing version? What are you changing that requires us to buy the game again? What's going on here? I got no clue. Moving on. Based on the pre-order pages on Best Buy, it is hinted that Amiibos may just... Oh my goodness. Amiibos may just unlock the respective characters for those Amiibos. As, yeah, the Best Buy store page for the Wolf Amiibo for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate mentions tapping it on your gamepad to unlock the character. Now, this could just be Best Buy making assumptions, or it could be a hint of how Amiibos are going to be used in Smash Ultimate outside of the usual. And this was actually something I was wondering about, because of course, the way you use Amiibos in Smash Bros., and this is how they'll work in Smash Ultimate, is that they remember what moves work and don't work, and it sort of builds this little custom learning AI character that you can fight against, and you can load them up by tapping your Amiibo on the system. And I was like, wait a second, at the start of Smash Ultimate, you don't have that many characters. You only have the original roster from Smash 64, and you have to unlock the rest of them. And it's like, how's that gonna work? So, because there's all these Amiibos out there, most of them will not be unlocked when you first get Smash Ultimate. So so how's that gonna work? Are we just gonna be able to play against characters that we don't yet have? Will it unlock those characters? And this is hinting that it might unlock those characters. There's some people speculating if they're going to lock characters behind Amiibos, which I do not think will happen. Nintendo is certainly smarter than that. They generally haven't screwed us over that hard. Because, of course, if they did that, if it was, the only way to get this character is to buy the Amiibo, that would be a massive blow to Smash Ultimate. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that it is plausible that amiibos might unlock their respective characters. And there's a lot of people who are like, why would you go out and buy these figures just to unlock these characters? To which I can answer that question. Because we already own the figures. If you have a favorite from Smash 4, if you have a main in Smash 4, chances are you already own their amiibo. And so, it would be very nice if you could just start up Smash Ultimate, scan their amiibo, and be able to use it. I can confirm I have a Daisy amiibo, and as I've talked about repeatedly on this show, I can't use it for anything, because it's not supported by anything. So when Smash Ultimate comes out, I look forward to finally having a use for the Daisy amiibo, scanning it in and being able to play Daisy on day one. This will be especially good for tournament organizers who are like, oh crap, how are we going to unlock like 70 different characters for use in tournaments? Amiibos will certainly help with that. And I know that on launch day, me and some of my friends are actually planning on having a get-together party where we all go out, pick up our copies of Smash Ultimate, and pretty much play it all night. We're all planning ahead for this. This is a thing we're totally making happen. And we all own a pretty hefty pile of amiibos. So if this is the case, that we can unlock characters via amiibo, then we're just going to have a party where we have all the amiibos set out and everyone can just scan them in and unlock the characters. That would be amazing. We'll have like 75% of the roster unlocked almost instantly. We'll just have to unlock the newcomers. And then, I don't mind having to unlock Richter if I can, start the game and immediately get Daisy. So, very excited about that. Looking forward to how that's handled. We don't have 100% confirmation on that, but that might be how it works. Moving on. Million Arthur Arcana Blood hits PS4 in Japan November 29th. What the heck is that? Well, Million Arthur is a somewhat long-running series of games from Square Enix where, I know there's a mobile game. I've played a crappy VR version of the mobile game. And, Million Arthur Arcana Blood is a 2D sprite-based fighter. Some pretty decent-looking HD sprites in it. I'm wondering if Examu, the makers of Arcana Heart, are involved at all. But, it really looks like their sprite work. But either way, we've got a 2D fighter. It's been out in Japanese arcades for a while, and I'm very happy to hear that at least in Japan, it is scheduled to get a home port on November 29th. This ties in very well with the next piece of news. SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy is getting a DLC character, and it's the Thief from Million Arthur. So yay, she'll be in SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy as a guest DLC fighter. That's super cool. Good to know that game is getting DLC characters. That's a good pick for a DLC character. I will probably pick that up. Moving on. Nintendo Labo, as you might have heard, is releasing a vehicle pack, and that is going to be supported by Mario Kart 8. At the same time, Music Game Demo is going to receive support for the Nintendo Labo piano, which that's certainly interesting, and I need to look into this demo, because the Nintendo Labo piano with demo might make the game way cooler. I know very little about it, but I do like that they are looking at putting that in there. Moving further along, classic strategy game Landgrisser 1 and 2. The first game was released in America as War Song on the Sega Genesis, but Landgrisser 1 and 2 are being remade for Switch, and the art sucks. This has been a major sticking point, because the artwork for Landgrisser is one of its most well-known and key features. Unfortunately, the poor guy who drew the artwork for that game, and many other games to be honest, he's not doing so well. He's kind of worked himself to death. He is nearly blind and his right hand barely works. Youch. So getting the original artist back is out of the question. Having said that, there are enough art books out there that I would have to think we could just scan in HD portraits of this guy's art, or trace the existing artwork from the previous game, or do like the mobile games do, because believe it or not, there is a Landgrisser mobile game, because of course there is. There's a mobile version of every RPG out there. There's a Landgrisser mobile game, and it has art from a completely different artist, but they stay much closer and more true to the source material. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, because I like a lot of these designs, and I don't like it when designs get watered down, like they do in this recent remake, where I'm just looking at these designs and it's like, this guy's these two main characters look nearly identical because they didn't get the first game's, like, the main character's little upward swish to his hair is completely missing, and that makes him far more distinctive than the second game's character, and they don't have big enough pauldrons, and everyone just looks generic compared to how they looked in the past. This has been a major sticking point for a lot of people, and a lot of folks are complaining about it. Be interesting to see how that all goes down. Moving on, I know a lot of people are interested in the fact that we are getting a lot of old franchises back. I was just mentioning how nearly every RPG series under the sun is getting a crappy mobile version, and sure enough, joining Phantasy Star Idola and Star Ocean, whatever the heck, Wild Arms now has a crappy mobile version, so yay for that. But in other series that are coming back, like Devil May Cry, people have been wondering, I wonder when Onimusha's coming back. Well, wonder no more. Onimusha is getting an HD re-release. That's right. Let's see. It's called Onimusha Warlords. I know I saw it's coming to PS4. Think it's coming to PC. I'm trying to find the announcement of it. Think it's coming to PC. Definitely coming to PS4, and yeah, Onimusha is back. Or back-ish. It's getting a re-release anyway, so if you're wondering about that, yeah. Well, welcome back, Onimusha. Meanwhile, the guy in charge of the Yakuza series is teasing the announcement of, quote, something truly different within the next month. Basically, after Tokyo Game Show, they're going to announce something weird. There's going to be a lot of Yakuza at the Tokyo Game Show, and they're moving on to something else. They say that this is something that has been in development for like 3 years. And honestly, I am going to make a bet. There we go. It's Onimusha Warlords. Oh, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Nice. There will be a Switch version of Onimusha. But I think, here's my bet. This is actually what I hope it is. I am going to bet that the new game from the Yakuza director is going to be a free-roaming, open-world idol simulation. I say this because if you played Yakuza 5, which is the one the most people should and probably haven't played because it's the only one that didn't get a physical release in the US, halfway through that game, you get to play as Kiryu's adopted daughter Haruka, who is trying to make it as an idol, and instead of getting into street fights, you get into street dance-offs, and there's idol competitions, and it also reveals the seedy underworld of being an idol and stuff like that. And I sat there, and I looked at that, and I said, yo, I care more about this than the entire rest of the Yakuza series. This seems really, really fun. I wish they'd make this into a full game. And this guy, he's saying that this has been in development for like over 3 years, which was about when Yakuza 5 came out. And he says something truly different, which, you know, I would certainly say the Haruka section is truly different. So I'm betting, this is my bet, the Haruka, they're going to take the Haruka section from Yakuza 5, they're going to make it into a full game. Betting on that, if they do, they will have all my money. Just take it. And cripes, I just remembered there's that Switch game I need to pick up. Shoot. Anyway, that just came back to me. But yes, take my money. I'm very excited to see what they do with that. And speaking of people being very assured of things, there's a lot of leaks, quote unquote, coming out for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I am amused, because the biggest leak is that there is supposedly going to be a second Square Enix character. And so many people are like, oh man, it's gonna be Geno, it's gotta be Geno, it has to be Geno. And Geno's a pretty good bet. But there are so many people convinced it's Sora as well. It's not gonna be Sora. And if it was Sora, that would be really stupid. Just Kingdom Hearts doesn't have that great a representation on Nintendo systems. It's on some, but Kingdom Hearts is really more of a Sony series, and it's big, especially in America, but the main point I keep making is Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is one of the biggest games in Japan. It defined the JRPG genre. It is freaking beloved. They had to pass laws about when you can release new Dragon Quest games because they are so overwhelmingly popular. Dragon Quest is, and on top of that, all the recent releases have been very, all the new characters they've been introducing for Smash Ultimate have been very, very, very US-centric. I've mentioned this before. Ridley was such a US character because Japan doesn't care about Metroid that they started nicknaming him Captain America. And now K. Rool's been announced, so that's even more Western. So, like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, you gotta get something in there for the Japanese players. My bet is on Dragon Quest Slime. Mark my words, it will be a Dragon Quest Slime. I would actually bet money on it. Not too much, because Geno is a chance. A lot of people want Geno. Geno is very much a Nintendo character, but sort of joint ownership with Square Enix. We don't know what the deal is there. There is actually a good chance it could be Geno and the Dragon Quest Slime, because really we don't actually know who owns the rights to that character. It's a bizarre limbo situation, but I'm actually going to bet that Geno could get in there. But I'm really thinking Dragon Quest Slime, too. I just think that has a higher chance. It's just more plausible. So that's something. Speaking of RPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles X's Elma will be coming to Xenoblade 2 as a blade that you can get. Because yes, they are still releasing all sorts of updates for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Very good game. Need to get back to the grind. And yeah, I think that sums up all of the non-VR things. Yes, it does. Let's take a quick look at something, and then we're going to take a short break and finish the show off with the gigantic pile of VR announcements. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. All right. Then we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about the PlayStation VR because it is having quite a week this week and has an interesting future on the horizon. So, please stay tuned for that. Until then, here is, let's see here. Here is Trip by LMI here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for just a little more of GameBabble Live. That was People Say by Wu-Tang featuring Redman here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So we are coming up on our final segment, and oh, egad, what a week for VR. This week, the PlayStation VR has received not one, not two, not three, not even four, 6 new games have come out for PlayStation VR this week. Let's read them off, shall we? First of all, Firewall 0 Hour, a tactical a 4v4 online first-person shooter with aim support that is getting nothing but rave reviews. I'm planning on picking it up after the show. I look forward to streaming it later tonight. It is, whew, buddy, that game is looking pretty darn incredible. You got multiple different characters, each with their own special abilities. Everyone's saying positive things about it. I will say I am concerned because you can't play the single player offline, and that is a personal pet peeve of mine. Normally I wouldn't even buy a game because of this, but I'll put up with it this time. Maybe they'll patch it. But I gotta play this game, especially because I am concerned about the online health of an online-only VR game, because I've seen a lot of these fall by the wayside, and you kind of want to get in there on that first week so you can experience the game in full bloom, whether you like it or not. I don't like it, but I do want to experience the game right now when it has the biggest player base and everyone's finding matches nice and easy, and all sorts of good things are happening. So, picking that up after the show. Following that, we have Catch and Release, which is a VR fishing game where the shtick is that you get a rowboat and you can row in VR, then grab your fishing rod in VR and start fishing in VR. And there's a radio that you can turn on and it has different songs, and it's just this full fishing in VR experience. There's already a couple VR fishing games, but this one looks pretty interesting. Then you have Torn, which is sort of a first-person Twilight Zone-inspired adventure where you're solving puzzles and walking through a house and stuff. Bow to Blood, which is a futuristic space pirate tournament game. It's single player. It's supposed to be very good, and the idea is that you play like a space pirate captain who commands robot crew members on their ship while like shooting at other people, and you can even like pull out a sidearm and like fire a pistol and stuff while you're also steering your ship and doing all sorts of... It seems really interesting. There's Downward Spiral Horus Station, which I don't know a whole lot about, and Viking Days, which really looks like a minigame collection. But yeah, that's a good chunk of games. I mean, shoot, just Firewall Zero Hour is enough. And then next week, we have Zone of the Enders Mars, which is a remake of Zone of the Enders 2 that can be played either in 4K or in VR. There's a demo that's up if you want to experience it and you have a PlayStation VR. And I can safely tell you, playing Zone of the Enders in VR, very trippy, very surreal. You know, they actually rendered a cockpit for it, and it is positioned in the right place. You know, you look behind you and you see the entirety of Jehuti, you know, looming over you. It is very interesting. I make no guarantees about motion sickness. But it's time for the bad VR news. Ace Combat 7. So, when Ace Combat 7 was first announced, they were like, oh, it's going to have VR, and they made it sound like it would be the entire campaign. And then they said, no, it's not going to be the entire campaign, we'll have separate VR missions, but there's going to be tons of it. There's going to be like 12 to 15 hours. And then, as time progressed, we're like, so how much VR content is there? What are you going to provide? Because we've seen people utterly drop the ball on this, like Gran Turismo Sport, which was heavily advertised as being this VR game, and then all you could do was race against a single car. And that was it. That was the only VR mode. It didn't even have time trials at launch. So, we've seen games heavily advertised as being a VR game utterly drop the ball. And Ace Combat 7, they have finally come out and said it will have five VR exclusive missions, which they expect to last about 3 hours. So, I know what I'm picking up used. Like, Ace Combat 7 could be really fun in VR. I don't doubt that. But I'm not a fan of the Ace Combat series. And without, like, the full campaign in VR, without more support beyond 5 missions, I'm not buying your game. And it's a shame, because if it was the whole thing, I would have bought the game and the HOTUS stick. I would have bought a flight stick to fully experience the thing in VR if it had more VR. But no, just 5 missions. Apparently the full game is like 27 missions, so it is a decent chunk of the game in VR, but at the same time, not enough. 5 VR missions in Ace Combat 7 is more than what we were worried we'd get, but not as much as we'd really hoped. And it's weird, too, because Namco Bandai has really gone all in on VR. They have their own VR arcade in Japan with exclusive games you can only play there. Yet, they're not really fully taking advantage of VR. They're not really making the big AAA VR game. And this is, of course, what's driving a bunch of people insane about VR. Because a lot of people, they see virtual reality, they see all these people talking about it, and they're like, where's the games? And when they say games, they're like, we want AAA games. We want games that are part of a long-running, established franchise. I want to play a new entry of my favorite series in VR. And outside of Resident Evil 7, everyone's been dropping the ball there. Most companies don't want to put that much support in there, and they don't want to scale their games back enough to support VR, because remember, VR requires games to be displayed on 2 screens simultaneously at a solid minimum of 60 FPS. Now, how many games these days actually have a solid 60 FPS, let alone a solid 60 FPS with split screen? Not a lot. That means that you have to really heavily optimize your game to get it running in VR. And a lot of companies just they don't want to put in the time and effort to do that because there aren't enough people who have VR, and so they're like, whatever. And to the general populace, this is why VR sucks, because it quote-unquote has no games, even though there are over 200 games on the PSN store for the PlayStation VR, even though there's a ton of good ones. Even though 6 VR games came out today, it's not enough to really sell a lot of people, and I can't blame them. As of right now, I've mentioned this numerous times, VR is held up entirely by indie developers. And this is the whole reason why it works. I know a lot of people, they look at VR and they go, it's another stupid gimmick, it's just like motion control, but there's a major difference here. Motion control, each controller was proprietary. The Wiimote, the Move, and the Kinect all worked radically differently. They all could and couldn't do certain things, and so you couldn't port games between them. It was impossible. Games had to be made for one of them, and they were all on consoles. VR, however, there's certain requirements to make a VR headset work as a VR headset. And as such, all the different VR controllers are very, very similar. They have similar capabilities. Many of these VR headsets are on PC. And it is entirely possible to take a PC VR game and port it to PSVR. That has been happening. There have been numerous ones of those. There's multiple, simultaneous PSVR, PC VR, simultaneous releases. That happens a lot. And that's the biggest strength, because that means that indie developers can make an indie game on their PC VR, it can get popular, and it can get ported to PSVR, and that is the entirety of what is holding up VR. It's not the big companies, because they're not willing to take the risk. It's not the long-running franchises, because they just don't want to go there. It's the little indie companies that care more about just having a VR experience for the developer's own sake, because they like VR, than it is making money. And those people are what is going to keep VR alive until we get the breakout hit, until we get that one game that puts VR on the map, causes everyone to turn their heads and go, oh, VR's a big deal, maybe I should hop on board. And that's why I have to always be cautious about recommending VR. As much as I love it, as much as I adore it, you have to understand what you're getting into. It is a lot of lower budget indie games. You're not going to see AAA games supported here. There's a lot, sometimes you'll get lucky, you'll get a port of a game from a previous generation or two that has like VR support added on. But you are not going to get these big, long-running franchises and AAA games in VR. You're going to get a lot of indie stuff, a lot of experimental stuff, some of which is really cool, some of which is really good. But we're still building up that library, we're still experimenting, we're still figuring things out. Having said that, though, I like what I've played. And speaking of PC VR games getting ported to PSVR, Sirento is possibly going to come out in January. For anyone unfamiliar, Sirento is a VR ninja game that is supposedly really, really good. A lot of people have been calling it, well, the best games in VR. I remember when I first got my PlayStation VR, the first thing a friend of mine said to me was, do you have Sirento? He knew nothing about VR other than, oh yeah, there's this game called Sirento that looks so cool it makes me want to buy a VR. Can I play that on PSVR? No, it hasn't been ported. That's the thing a lot of people forget. VR games aren't released on every system. Most are, certain ones aren't. Galgun VR is not available on PSVR for multiple stupid reasons. So yeah, Sirento is not on PSVR yet, but the developers recently showed up on the PSVR subreddit and said, we're working on it, we're optimizing it, we're aiming for a January release date. So it might wind up being February, it might get caught up in Sony bureaucracy, but they're aiming for a January release date. Here's hoping, because I definitely want to play that game. And that, I do believe, sums it up for this week. So thank you very much to everyone for listening. And be sure to tune in next week for more GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Always a blast being here, even if I don't like waking up early for it. Even if sometimes I'm sliding in a bit late. It's always good to be here. I am now going to sit down and try to edit together some of my episodes, because I've been keeping an archive of nearly every single episode of this show I've produced, but they're in a kind of weird format that, like, I only have the audio files from when I'm talking, which is good because I don't have to cut out the copyrighted music. So I only have those audio files, but it's like each one is a separate file, so I have to put them all together and splice them up, and then apparently I believe the lights above me are very loud, because yes, I'm hearing the buzzing now. On all my audio files, there's this annoying buzz, and it's like, I gotta clean that up. And I tried to do that at home, and there were so many things preventing me from trying to get the show uploaded. And now I have over a year, like nearly 2 years worth of, I think it's more than 2 years, maybe. I don't know, I need to double check. But definitely more than a year's worth of shows that I would like to get uploaded for y'all. But I tried to do it on my own computer at home. Took me an hour and a half to finish compiling one episode. I probably have like 100 episodes to do. And I'm like, I could do this in like 5 minutes if I had Adobe Audition. But Adobe doesn't want to sell me Audition because they're a bunch of jerks. So I'm going to go and I'm going to try to edit together my episodes and see if maybe I can get some of these uploaded for y'all. That would be very nice, wouldn't it? But until then, thank you so much for listening to GameBabble Live. If there's any changes in the program, be sure to stay tuned to the GameBabble Live YouTube channel, or the GameBabble YouTube channel, really. It's youtube.com/user/GameBabble show. I will certainly be sure to get tonight's, assuming the Firewall 0 Hour stream happens tonight and I don't get caught up in something stupid, then I will try to get the Firewall 0 Hour stream up on there. My Twitch channel is GeltonZ, but, GELTONZ, but yeah, we'll see what happens, okay? We'll see what happens. I got a lot of projects in the air. I'm hoping to stream some Firewall 0 Hour, and I'm hoping that game is good. Very excited for it. Until then, though, it's time to kick you back to the music, and thank you so much for listening to GameBabble Live. Again, see you next week, Tuesday, noon to 3 p.m. Here is Blame by Skylar Stecker, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave Ferguson. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening.